Listen closely, because what I'm about to share with you could change everything. You wake up every morning with dreams tucked away in the corners of your heart, ambitions that whisper to you in quiet moments, goals that seem just beyond your fingertips. You've told yourself 1,000 times that you'll start tomorrow, that you'll become the person you're meant to be, that you'll finally achieve what you truly want. But here's the truth that Orison Swett Marden understood over a century ago. A truth that still burns with relevance today. The distance between where you are and where you want to be isn't measured in luck, connections, or circumstances. It's measured in the deliberate, conscious application of principles that have transformed ordinary people into extraordinary achievers. And right now, in this moment, you're about to discover exactly how to bridge that gap. Marden wasn't just another motivational writer spinning feel-good stories from an ivory tower. He was a man who lost everything, who faced bankruptcy and disaster, who rebuilt his life from absolute ruins, not once, but multiple times. When he speaks about getting what you want, he speaks from the scarred hands of experience, from the wisdom earned through actual suffering and triumphant comeback. His insights aren't theoretical, they're battle-tested truths forged in the furnace of real life. The first principle Marden emphasizes, the foundation upon which all achievement rests, is the absolute necessity of knowing exactly what you want. This seems simple, almost embarrassingly obvious, yet most people stumble through life with only the haziest notion of their true desires. They want success, but can't define what success means to them specifically. They want happiness, but haven't identified what actually makes them happy. They want more money without calculating how much would genuinely satisfy their needs and aspirations. This vagueness, this lack of crystal-clear definition, is the first reason people fail to get what they want. Imagine a ship leaving harbor with no destination programmed into its navigation system. It might have the finest engines, the most experienced crew, the most favorable winds, but without a specific destination, it will wander aimlessly across the ocean, burning fuel, exhausting its crew, and ultimately arriving nowhere meaningful. Your mind works exactly the same way. It's the most sophisticated goal-seeking mechanism ever created, but it requires precise coordinates. Feed it vague wishes, and you'll get vague results. Feed it specific, detailed, vivid targets, and watch how your entire being reorganizes itself to pursue them. Marden tells the story of a young man who came to him complaining about his lack of progress in life. The man was in his late 20s, working a job he disliked, living in circumstances he found depressing, yet he insisted he was trying to improve his situation. When Marden asked him, "What exactly do you want?" the young man launched into a rambling list of things he didn't want, situations he wanted to escape, conditions he found intolerable. After listening patiently, Marden stopped him and said, "I didn't ask what you don't want. I asked what you do want." The young man fell silent, genuinely confused. He had spent so much energy focusing on what he was running from that he had never clearly defined what he was running toward. This is the trap that captures millions. They become experts at identifying problems, but amateurs at envisioning solutions. They can describe in excruciating detail everything wrong with their current situation, but draw a blank when asked to paint a picture of their ideal life. Marden insists that this must be reversed. You must become absolutely clear, so clear that you could describe your desired outcome to a stranger and they would understand exactly what you're pursuing. But clarity alone isn't enough. And this is where Marden's philosophy deepens. Once you know what you want, you must want it with an intensity that transforms casual preference into burning necessity. There's a vast difference between wishing for something and committing to it with every fiber of your being. Marden calls this the white heat of desire, the kind of want that keeps you awake at night, that dominates your thoughts, that makes you willing to sacrifice lesser pleasures for greater achievement. Consider the difference between someone who says they want to write a novel and someone who must write a novel, someone who feels incomplete without putting their story on paper. The first person will write when they feel inspired, when conditions are perfect, when they have uninterrupted time. The second person will write on lunch breaks before dawn, after everyone else has gone to bed, in notebooks during commutes, because not writing causes them actual pain. The intensity of desire determines the consistency of effort, and consistency of effort determines results. Marden observed countless people whose achievements far exceeded their apparent talents and advantages, and in every case, he found this burning intensity of desire. They weren't necessarily the smartest people in their fields, the most educated, the best connected, or the most naturally gifted, but they wanted what they wanted with a ferocity that made obstacles irrelevant. When you want something badly enough, you don't ask whether it's possible, you ask what's required, and then you pay that price without hesitation or complaint. Now, here's where many motivational teachings go astray, and here's where Marden's wisdom proves itself superior. Wanting something intensely isn't enough if that desire remains locked inside your head as mere fantasy. Desire must be translated into action, and not just any action, but intelligent, directed, persistent action. This is the third pillar of Marden's philosophy, the absolute requirement of doing the work. We live in an age increasingly enchanted by magical thinking, by the idea that visualization alone creates reality, that positive thoughts automatically attract positive outcomes. Marden would have recognized this as dangerous delusion. Yes, he believed in the power of thought, in the importance of mental attitude, in the necessity of faith, but he never separated these from the grinding, unglamorous work of actually doing the things that lead to results. He tells the story of a man who attended countless lectures on success, read every book he could find on achievement, filled notebooks with inspiring quotes and affirmations, yet remained stuck in mediocrity year after year. The man finally approached Marden in frustration, asking why the principles weren't working for him. Marden asked a simple question: "What have you actually done?" The man looked confused. "I've been learning," he replied. "I've been preparing myself." Marden's response was blunt. "You've been procrastinating. Learning is not doing. Preparing is not achieving. You can't study your way to success. You have to work your way there." This hits at a profound truth that our modern culture often obscures. Action is the bridge between the inner world of thought and the outer world of results. You can have the clearest vision, the most burning desire, the most positive attitude, but if you're not willing to wake up every day and do difficult things, to push through resistance, to act even when you don't feel like it, you will achieve nothing of significance. Marden wasn't advocating mindless action, though, frantic busyness that creates the illusion of progress without actual advancement. He emphasized intelligent action, meaning action that's aligned with your goal, that moves you closer to what you want rather than just keeping you busy. So many people confuse activity with productivity, motion with progress. They stay busy all day, yet wonder why they never seem to get ahead. The key is to identify the specific actions that will most directly lead to your desired outcome. Then make those actions non-negotiable, daily priorities. If your goal requires developing a skill, then daily practice of that skill must become sacred. If your goal requires building relationships, then daily, meaningful connection must be protected. If your goal requires creating something, then daily creative work must take precedence over entertainment and distraction. Here's where Marden introduces a concept that might surprise you: the importance of beginning, right now, with what you have, where you are. Too many people postpone action until conditions are perfect, until they have more resources, more knowledge, more time, more support. This waiting for ideal circumstances is perhaps the most common form of self-sabotage. Marden insists that you must start with what you have, even if what you have seems laughably inadequate. He shares the example of a young woman who wanted to become a teacher but lacked the money for formal education. Rather than accepting defeat or waiting until she could somehow afford college, she began teaching neighborhood children for free in her kitchen every evening. Her classroom was cramped and poorly equipped. She had no credentials, no salary, no official recognition. But she was teaching, actually doing the thing she wanted to do, gaining real experience every single day. Within 2 years, parents were insisting on paying her. Within 5 years, she had opened her own school, and within 10 years, she was training other teachers. She didn't wait for permission or perfect circumstances. She simply began. This principle of beginning where you are applies universally. Want to be a writer? Start writing today, right now, even if you're writing in a cheap notebook with a dollar pen. Want to start a business? Start serving customers today, even if your office is your kitchen table. Want to get in shape? Start exercising today, even if your gym is your living room and your equipment is your own body weight. The act of beginning, of actually doing the thing, rather than merely planning to do the thing, creates momentum, develops skills, builds confidence, and most importantly, moves you from the realm of wishful thinking into the realm of actual achievement. But let's be honest, and this is where Marden's teaching becomes truly valuable. Starting is relatively easy compared to continuing. The early enthusiasm that launches you into action will fade, guaranteed. There will come a morning when you don't want to practice your skill, an evening when you'd rather watch television than work on your project, a week when everything seems pointless and your goal appears impossibly distant. This is where most people fail, not because they never started, but because they stopped when things got hard. Marden addresses this with stark realism. He doesn't promise that pursuing your goals will be pleasant or easy. He doesn't suggest that positive thinking will eliminate obstacles or that the universe will rearrange itself to accommodate your ambitions. Instead, he tells you the truth. Getting what you want will require persisting through discouragement, failure, criticism, self-doubt, and countless moments when quitting seems like the most rational option. The difference between those who achieve their goals and those who don't isn't talent or luck, it's persistence. It's the willingness to continue taking action even when results aren't immediately visible, even when progress seems imperceptible, even when everyone around you thinks you're crazy for not giving up. Marden calls this persistence the magnetic power, because consistent action over time creates a kind of accumulating force that eventually becomes irresistible. Think of it this way. Every action you take toward your goal is like depositing a coin in a bank. Early on, your account balance seems trivially small, hardly worth the effort of making deposits. But if you keep making deposits day after day, week after week, month after month, something magical happens. Not only does your account grow through your deposits, but it begins to generate interest, compound returns that accelerate your progress. The writer who writes every day for a year hasn't just created 365 pieces of writing, they've developed muscle memory, deepened their understanding of craft, built a body of work that attracts opportunities. The compound effect of consistent action over time is almost miraculous in its results. But here's the trap that Marden warns against, and it's a trap that catches even the most dedicated, mindless persistence in the wrong direction. Some people mistake stubbornness for persistence, continuing to repeat ineffective actions because they've confused effort with intelligence. True persistence, according to Marden, includes the wisdom to evaluate your approach and adjust when necessary. This is where the principle of learning enters the equation. As you take action toward your goals, you must remain alert, observant, willing to learn from what works and what doesn't. Every failure contains feedback if you're willing to examine it honestly rather than simply feeling discouraged. Every success contains lessons about what to repeat and amplify. The person who combines persistent action with intelligent learning becomes unstoppable because they're not just working hard, they're working smart, constantly refining their approach based on real-world results. Marden emphasizes that this learning should extend beyond your own direct experience. One of the fastest ways to accelerate your progress is to study those who have already achieved what you want to achieve. Not to copy them blindly, but to understand the principles they applied, the strategies they employed, the mistakes they avoided or recovered from. Why stumble through every possible error when you can learn from others who have already paid that price? He tells of a young entrepreneur who wanted to build a successful business but kept hitting the same obstacles repeatedly. Finally, exhausted and discouraged, he sought out a successful businessman and simply asked for guidance. The older man shared insights that immediately illuminated the younger man's errors, strategies that solved problems in weeks that might have taken years to figure out independently. "I wasted 2 years," the young entrepreneur lamented, "when I could have asked for help earlier." The older man smiled and replied, "You didn't waste 2 years. You invested them in learning a crucial lesson about humility and the value of mentorship." This brings us to another crucial element in Marden's philosophy: the role of other people in achieving your goals. While personal effort and persistence are essential, the belief that you must achieve everything in isolation is both arrogant and impractical. Human beings are inherently social creatures, and nearly every significant achievement involves collaboration, support, guidance, or inspiration from others. Marden advises cultivating relationships deliberately and strategically, not in a manipulative sense, but with honest awareness that the people you surround yourself with will dramatically influence your trajectory. If you spend your time with cynics who mock ambition, with complainers who find fault with everything, with people who have given up on their own dreams, their attitudes will seep into your consciousness no matter how strong you think your resolve is. Conversely, if you seek out people who are actively pursuing their goals, who encourage rather than discourage, who challenge you to raise your standards, their influence will lift you. This isn't about abandoning friends who are struggling or only associating with successful people. It's about being conscious of the fact that attitudes are contagious, and you need to protect your mental environment the same way you'd protect your physical health. You wouldn't knowingly drink contaminated water. Why would you contaminate your mind by constantly absorbing negative, defeatist attitudes? Marden also addresses the reality that pursuing your goals will often require you to say no to good things in order to say yes to great things. This is perhaps one of the hardest disciplines because it involves sacrifice, choosing to forego immediate pleasure or social approval in favor of long-term achievement. The person who wants to build a business may need to say no to social events in order to say yes to work sessions. The person who wants to master a skill may need to say no to entertainment in order to say yes to practice. The person who wants to save money for investment may need to say no to impulse purchases in order to say yes to financial freedom. These trade-offs are real and sometimes painful. Marden doesn't minimize this, but he points out that every choice involves trade-offs, including the choice to not pursue your goals. When you choose comfort over effort, distraction over focus, immediate gratification over long-term achievement, you're trading away your dreams, your potential, your future satisfaction. The question isn't whether you'll make sacrifices, it's which sacrifices you'll make. Will you sacrifice the temporary and trivial for the permanent and meaningful? Or will you sacrifice your dreams for another evening of mindless scrolling? Now let's address something that Marden considers absolutely critical but often overlooked: the power of your mental attitude, not as a magical force that reshapes reality through wishful thinking, but as the lens through which you interpret challenges and setbacks. Two people can face identical obstacles. One sees them as proof that success is impossible. The other sees them as problems to solve. The external circumstance is the same, but the internal interpretation creates completely different outcomes. Marden insists that cultivating an attitude of resourcefulness, resilience, and determined optimism isn't about denying reality or pretending problems don't exist. It's about refusing to let problems have the final word. When you encounter an obstacle, a resourceful attitude asks, "How can I overcome this? What resources do I have? Who might be able to help? What alternative approach might work?" A defeated attitude simply concludes, "This is impossible. I can't do this. I should give up." The fascinating thing Marden observed is that people with a resourceful attitude often seem to have better luck, not because the universe favors them, but because they notice opportunities that defeated people overlook. When you're convinced something is impossible, you stop looking for solutions, which becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you're convinced there must be a way, you keep exploring options, trying approaches, asking questions, and often you discover paths forward that initially seemed to not exist. He shares the story of a man who wanted to attend a prestigious conference but couldn't afford the registration fee. A defeated attitude would have stopped there. Can't afford it, can't go, end of story. But this man had cultivated resourcefulness. He contacted the organizers, explained his situation, and offered to volunteer in exchange for admission. They agreed. And not only did he attend the conference, but his volunteer role put him in direct contact with influential people he would never have met as a regular attendee. His resourcefulness transformed an obstacle into an opportunity that exceeded his original goal. This kind of creative problem-solving, this refusal to accept obstacles as stop signs, is what Marden calls the millionaire mind, because it's the mental habit that characterizes those who achieve extraordinary success regardless of their starting circumstances. They don't have fewer problems than other people. They just have a different relationship with problems. They see problems as interesting puzzles rather than insurmountable barriers, as temporary conditions rather than permanent reality, as situations that reveal what they're made of rather than excuses to quit. But, and this is crucial, maintaining this attitude requires intentional effort. Your default mental programming, shaped by evolution and past experience, tends toward caution, toward expecting problems, toward remembering failures more vividly than successes. This negativity bias served our ancestors well when survival depended on avoiding threats, but it sabotages modern achievement, which requires taking calculated risks and persisting through setbacks. Marden recommends a daily practice of deliberately directing your thoughts, not through denial of challenges, but through conscious emphasis on your resources, past successes, potential solutions, and reasons for optimism. This might feel artificial at first, like you're lying to yourself, but Marden argues that your habitual pessimism is equally artificial, equally a choice, just one that you've practiced so long it feels natural. You can practice optimism with the same dedication until it becomes your new default. He suggests specific techniques. Start each day by clearly visualizing yourself successfully completing one key action toward your goal. This isn't magical thinking, it's mental rehearsal, the same technique used by elite athletes. End each day by writing down 3 things you did well, 3 small wins, no matter how minor. This trains your brain to notice progress and success rather than only fixating on what went wrong. When you encounter a setback, give yourself a strict time limit for disappointment, say 10 minutes to feel bad, then deliberately shift to problem-solving mode. Another critical element Marden emphasizes is the importance of taking care of your physical vitality. Your mind and body aren't separate entities, they're completely interconnected, and trying to achieve ambitious goals while neglecting your health is like trying to win a race with a car that's running on fumes and badly needs maintenance. You might make some progress, but you'll never reach your potential. This means treating sleep as sacred, not as something to sacrifice when you're busy. It means eating in ways that fuel your energy rather than draining it. It means moving your body regularly, because physical vitality directly affects mental clarity, emotional resilience, and the energy you can bring to your pursuits. Marden observed that many people who complained about lacking the energy to pursue their goals were simply exhausted from poor sleep, terrible nutrition, and sedentary lifestyles. When they corrected these basics, suddenly they had energy to spare. He tells the story of a writer who swore he was too busy to exercise, claiming every moment needed to be devoted to his writing. Yet he would often sit at his desk for hours, staring at blank pages, unable to think clearly, producing little of value. Finally, at a friend's insistence, he started taking a brisk 30-minute walk each morning. He worried this would reduce his productive time, but the opposite happened. His thinking became clearer, his writing flowed more easily, and he actually produced more high-quality work in less time because his mind was functioning better. The time lost to exercise was returned many times over in increased productivity. This principle extends to rest and recovery in general. Marden warns against the cult of overwork, the misguided belief that more hours automatically equals more results. Some of the most productive people work intensely for focused periods, then rest completely, allowing their minds and bodies to recover. They understand that creativity, insight, and high-quality work require a rested brain, not an exhausted one. The person who works 12 hours a day in a fog of exhaustion often accomplishes less than the person who works 6 hours with complete focus and energy. Now let's talk about something that Marden addresses with particular wisdom: the role of faith. Not necessarily religious faith, though he respects that, but fundamental faith in 3 things. First, faith that your goal is achievable. Second, faith in your ability to learn what you need to learn and do what you need to do. Third, faith that your efforts will ultimately yield results, even when immediate evidence seems lacking. This kind of faith isn't blind optimism or wishful thinking. It's a decision to operate from the assumption that success is possible rather than impossible, that you're capable rather than incapable, that persistence will pay off rather than prove futile. Why this matters is that your assumptions shape your actions. If you deeply believe success is impossible, you'll unconsciously sabotage yourself, quit too early, not try your best. If you deeply believe success is possible, you'll unconsciously support yourself, persist longer, give your full effort. Marden points out that this faith must be tested and strengthened through experience. Each small success builds evidence that you can achieve things. Each overcome obstacle proves that you're capable of solving problems. Each period of persistence that eventually yields results reinforces the belief that consistent effort works. This is why starting with smaller, achievable goals can be strategic, not because small goals are the ultimate aim, but because achieving them builds the faith required to pursue larger goals. He shares the example of a man who wanted to completely transform his career but was paralyzed by doubt about whether he could succeed. Marden suggested he set a much smaller goal first, master one specific skill related to his desired career within 3 months. The man succeeded, which proved to himself that he could learn and achieve when he applied himself. This success gave him the confidence to set a slightly larger goal, which he also achieved. Each success built more faith until he was ready to pursue the complete career transformation he originally wanted, now armed with evidence-based confidence, rather than just hopeful wishing. This principle of building momentum through small wins is powerful. Rather than being overwhelmed by the enormous gap between where you are and where you want to be, you focus on the next achievable step, then the next, then the next. Each step feels manageable, each success provides encouragement, and over time, these small steps compound into major transformation. The person who tries to leap from complete beginner to expert overnight almost always fails and becomes discouraged. The person who's willing to be a beginner, then a novice, then intermediate, then advanced, step by deliberate step, almost always succeeds. Marden also addresses the crucial importance of developing specific skills and knowledge rather than remaining vaguely aspirational. It's not enough to want to be successful in business. You need to develop actual business skills. Understanding finances, marketing, operations, management. It's not enough to want to be a great artist. You need to develop actual artistic skills through dedicated practice and study. The dream inspires you, but skills enable you. This requires humility, a willingness to be a student, to acknowledge what you don't know, to seek out teachers and learning resources, to practice fundamentals even when they're boring. Many people want the results of mastery without the process of learning. They want to already be great rather than becoming great. This impatience causes them to skip essential foundations, then wonder why they struggle. Marden advises treating skill development as a long-term investment. The hours you spend practicing, studying, learning might not show immediate returns, but they're accumulating compound interest. The writer who studies craft for a year might not publish anything significant during that year, but they're building capacity that will pay dividends for decades. The entrepreneur who spends months learning financial management might not generate revenue during that time, but they're developing competence that will prevent costly mistakes later. One of the most powerful sections of Marden's teaching deals with how to handle criticism and opposition. When you pursue meaningful goals, especially goals that differ from conventional paths, you will face critics. Some will be well-meaning people who genuinely worry you'll fail. Others will be people whose own inaction is challenged by your ambition, who need you to fail to justify their own giving up. Still others will simply misunderstand what you're trying to do. Marden's advice is neither to ignore all criticism nor to let it paralyze you. Instead, you must develop the wisdom to evaluate criticism based on its source and merit. Criticism from someone who has achieved what you're pursuing, offered constructively to help you improve, is gold. Listen carefully and adjust accordingly. Criticism from someone who has never attempted what you're doing, offered from fear or negativity, is worthless. Acknowledge it politely and disregard it completely. The key is maintaining strong boundaries around your goals and your belief in yourself. This doesn't mean becoming arrogant or dismissive of all feedback. It means developing an inner certainty that isn't easily shaken by external opinions. Marden describes this as having a core of steel surrounded by flexibility. Your fundamental commitment to your goal is unshakable, but your methods and approaches remain flexible based on what works. He tells the story of a young inventor who faced relentless mockery for his ideas. Friends told him he was wasting his time. Family members worried he was becoming obsessed. Practical people explained in detail why his invention could never work. For a while, these criticisms wore him down, making him doubt himself. Then he made a crucial decision. He would only accept technical feedback from people with relevant expertise, and he would completely disregard emotional opinions from people who didn't understand what he was doing. This mental boundary freed him to persist, and eventually his invention succeeded, silencing all the critics who had been so certain of his failure. This brings up another vital principle: the importance of protecting your mental environment. Just as you wouldn't leave toxic waste lying around your home, you shouldn't leave toxic ideas lying around your mind. This means being very selective about what information you consume, what media you expose yourself to, what conversations you participate in. If something consistently makes you feel powerless, angry, hopeless, or drained without providing genuine value, stop consuming it. Marden lived in an era without internet, without social media, without the constant barrage of information that characterizes modern life, yet his warnings are even more relevant now. In his time, people could absorb pessimism from their immediate social circle and local news. Today, people can absorb negativity from the entire planet 24 hours a day. The person who doesn't deliberately curate their information environment will have their consciousness shaped by whatever generates engagement through outrage, fear, and drama. This doesn't mean burying your head in the sand or ignoring real problems. It means being strategic about when, how, and how much you engage with negative information. You don't need to check news constantly throughout the day. A brief daily catch-up provides necessary awareness without drowning you in catastrophe. You don't need to participate in every online debate or read every criticism of things you care about. You don't need to maintain relationships with people who consistently drain your energy and undermine your confidence. Instead, deliberately seek out information, stories, and people that inspire you, that expand your sense of what's possible, that provide practical knowledge relevant to your goals. Read biographies of people who overcame odds similar to yours. Study the specific skills your goals require. Surround yourself with people who are also pursuing meaningful goals. Fill your mental environment with inputs that strengthen rather than weaken your resolve. Marden also emphasizes the importance of giving yourself credit for progress rather than only focusing on how far you still have to go. The person who has lost 20 pounds but still wants to lose 20 more can either celebrate the 20 lost or obsess over the 20 remaining. Both perspectives are factually accurate, but one fuels continued effort while the other breeds discouragement. You must become your own best cheerleader, acknowledging and celebrating your wins, however small, because this positive reinforcement makes persistence sustainable. He warns against the perfection trap, the belief that you must execute flawlessly or not try at all. This trap stops more people than any external obstacle because it makes every minor mistake feel like confirmation that you're not good enough. Marden insists that mistakes are not only inevitable but necessary. They're how you learn, how you refine your approach, how you develop genuine expertise. The person who never makes mistakes is the person who never tries anything challenging. The healthiest attitude toward mistakes is curiosity rather than shame. When something goes wrong, instead of thinking, "I'm such an idiot," or "I knew I couldn't do this," think, "That's interesting. What can I learn from this?" This simple mental shift transforms mistakes from evidence of inadequacy into valuable feedback. The most successful people aren't those who make no mistakes. They're those who make mistakes quickly, learn from them rapidly, and adjust their approach based on real-world results. Marden shares the story of Thomas Edison, who famously said he didn't fail thousands of times when developing the light bulb. He successfully discovered thousands of ways that didn't work. This reframing isn't just clever wordplay. It represents a fundamentally different relationship with failure. Each failed experiment provided data that narrowed the field of possibilities and brought him closer to the solution. He didn't need every experiment to succeed. He just needed to persist until he found one that did. This principle applies to your goals. You don't need every action you take to produce perfect results. You just need to keep taking action, learning, adjusting, and moving forward. The path from where you are to where you want to be will not be straight. It will zigzag, include detours, require backtracking sometimes. This is normal and expected, not evidence that you're doing something wrong. Now let's discuss something Marden considered crucial: the power of concentration. In his era, people had far fewer distractions than we do today, yet he still observed that most people scattered their attention across too many things, preventing them from achieving excellence in anything. How much more relevant is this warning now, when notifications ping constantly, entertainment is endlessly available, and the entire world's information sits in your pocket? Marden argues that the ability to concentrate fully on one thing, giving it your complete attention for sustained periods, is perhaps the most valuable skill you can develop. This goes beyond simple focus. It means having the discipline to identify your most important goal and giving it priority over everything else until significant progress is made. Not spreading yourself thin across a dozen goals, not constantly jumping from one interest to another, but choosing something meaningful and pursuing it with sustained intensity. This concentrated effort creates a kind of breakthrough that scattered effort never achieves. 10 hours spread across 10 different projects produces minimal results in each. 10 hours concentrated on one project produces substantial results, often including insights and progress that only come from sustained immersion. Marden observed that people who achieved remarkable things weren't necessarily more talented than others, but they were willing to concentrate their efforts in ways others weren't. This might require saying no to opportunities that seem attractive, but don't align with your primary goal. It might require disappointing people who want your time and attention. it might require accepting that you can't pursue every interesting possibility simultaneously. These are real costs, but they're the price of excellence, the price of actually achieving something significant rather than dabbling in everything while mastering nothing. Marden also addresses the relationship between your current circumstances and your goals, particularly for people who feel trapped by their current situation. He acknowledges that real constraints exist, that some people face genuine disadvantages and obstacles, but he firmly rejects the idea that your current circumstances must determine your future. The whole point is that by getting clear about what you want, cultivating intense desire, taking consistent action, persisting through difficulties, developing necessary skills, and maintaining positive mental attitudes, you can create circumstances very different from your current reality. He shares numerous examples of people who started with tremendous disadvantages yet achieved remarkable success, not to minimize the reality of their challenges, but to prove that obstacles, even severe ones, are not absolute barriers. A person might start poor, but if they make wise financial decisions consistently over years, they can build wealth. A person might start with limited education, but if they commit to continuous learning, they can become highly knowledgeable. A person might start with no connections, but if they focus on providing value and building relationships, they can create a powerful network. The key is refusing to use your circumstances as an excuse to not even try. Yes, some people have easier paths than others. This is undeniably true. But feeling bitter about this fact doesn't change it. It only adds emotional suffering to practical difficulty. The strategic approach is to acknowledge the reality of your starting point, then focus completely on what you can control: your efforts, your decisions, your learning, your persistence. Marden observed that many people waste enormous energy complaining about their circumstances to anyone who will listen. Energy that could be channeled into actually changing those circumstances. Complaining feels like you're doing something, but it accomplishes nothing except reinforcing your sense of helplessness. Taking action, even small action, even action that produces modest results, builds agency and momentum. This connects to another principle Marden emphasizes: the importance of taking responsibility. Not in the sense of blaming yourself for circumstances beyond your control, but in the sense of accepting that you are the primary agent in your own life. Other people can help or hinder you. Luck can be favorable or unfavorable. Circumstances can be easy or difficult, but ultimately, you decide what you think, how you respond, what actions you take, and whether you persist or quit. This responsibility is actually empowering because it means you're not helpless, waiting for someone else to fix your problems or for circumstances to magically improve. You have agency, you can take action, you can learn and grow. You can make different choices that lead to different results. The person who embraces this responsibility stops waiting for rescue and starts creating their own solutions. Conversely, the person who refuses responsibility remains stuck, always explaining how their problems are someone else's fault, how they would succeed if only circumstances were different, how they're victims of forces beyond their control. Even when these explanations are partially true, they're completely useless because they don't suggest any path forward. Focusing on what you can't control might protect your ego, but it guarantees continued frustration. Marden also discusses the role of habits in determining outcomes. Your life, as it exists right now, is largely the accumulated result of your daily habits. The person who habitually saves a portion of their income will inevitably accumulate wealth over time. The person who habitually spends everything they earn will remain financially stressed. The person who habitually exercises will be fit. The person who habitually overeats and stays sedentary will be unhealthy. This isn't moral judgment, it's mathematical certainty. The implication is powerful. If you want different results, you must establish different habits. Not through massive willpower and dramatic transformation, but through small, consistent changes that compound over time. Marden recommends identifying the 1 or 2 habits that would most directly lead to your goal, then focusing entirely on establishing those habits before adding anything else. For example, if your goal requires writing, establish a daily writing habit, even if it's just 15 minutes at first. Make this so consistent that it becomes automatic, something you do without internal debate. Once this habit is solid, add another. The person who tries to overhaul their entire life simultaneously almost always fails because willpower is limited. The person who changes one thing at a time, making each change permanent before adding the next, builds a foundation that supports long-term transformation. He emphasizes that establishing new habits requires patience during the awkward initial phase when the new behavior feels unnatural and requires conscious effort. This discomfort makes most people quit prematurely, concluding that the habit isn't working or isn't for them. But Marden insists that this discomfort is temporary, a necessary phase that everyone must pass through. If you persist through this awkward stage, the habit gradually becomes easier, eventually becoming so automatic that not doing it feels strange. Think of learning to drive a car. Initially, every action requires intense concentration, checking mirrors, adjusting speed, steering, signaling. It's overwhelming and exhausting. But after enough practice, these actions become automatic, happening without conscious thought while you listen to music or conduct conversations. The same transformation occurs with any habit if you persist long enough. The difficulty is temporary, but the benefits are permanent. Marden also addresses something that trips up many aspiring achievers: the comparison trap. In any field of endeavor, there will be people ahead of you, people with more resources, more talent, more experience, more success. If you measure yourself constantly against these people, you'll feel perpetually inadequate, always behind, never good enough. This comparison breeds discouragement and can sabotage your efforts entirely. The antidote is to compare yourself only to your past self. Are you better today than you were last month? Have you learned more, accomplished more, developed more skill? This is the only comparison that matters because it's the only comparison that's fair and useful. The person 10 steps ahead of you started their journey years before you did. They've accumulated advantages you don't yet have. They're solving problems you haven't encountered yet. Comparing your beginning to their middle is absurd and destructive. Instead, celebrate others' success genuinely, recognizing that their achievement proves what's possible. If they can do it, so can you, perhaps using different methods or taking a different timeline. But their success is evidence of possibility, not proof of your inadequacy. Marden observed that successful people rarely feel threatened by others' accomplishments. They feel inspired and curious. Unsuccessful people feel diminished by others' success because they've internalized the false belief that success is a limited resource that others' gains somehow subtract from their potential. The truth is that success isn't a pie where someone else's slice leaves less for you. Your achievement doesn't prevent anyone else's achievement. Someone else's failure doesn't guarantee your success. You're running your own race on your own timeline, toward your own unique destination. The only question that matters is whether you're moving forward on your path, not whether you're ahead of or behind anyone else on theirs. Now let's explore what Marden teaches about dealing with setbacks and failures, because these are inevitable, and how you handle them will determine whether you ultimately succeed. The person who expects smooth sailing will be devastated by obstacles. The person who expects challenges and has prepared mentally for them will take setbacks in stride, learning what they can and continuing forward. Marden suggests developing what we might call failure literacy, the ability to distinguish between different types of failure and respond appropriately to each. Some failures signal that your approach needs adjustment. These are valuable feedback requiring course correction. Some failures result from factors beyond your control. These require resilience and persistence without changing strategy. Some failures reveal that you're pursuing the wrong goal entirely. These require honest self-reflection and possibly pivoting to something more aligned with your genuine desires and abilities. The wisdom is in knowing which type of failure you're facing. This requires honest analysis rather than emotional reaction. When something doesn't work, resist the urge to either give up entirely or stubbornly repeat the exact same approach. Instead, ask productive questions. What specifically went wrong? What was in my control versus outside my control? What could I do differently next time? Is this goal still right for me? Or have I learned something that suggests a different direction? Marden shares the example of a man who started 3 different businesses, each failing within 2 years. On the surface, this looks like someone who should give up on entrepreneurship. But when the man analyzed his failures honestly, he noticed a pattern. All 3 businesses required skills in managing people, which he consistently struggled with. His 4th business was structured as a solo operation, leveraging his technical skills, and it succeeded dramatically. His previous failures weren't proof he couldn't succeed in business. They were feedback that he needed to find the right type of business for his particular strengths. This illustrates an important principle. Persistence doesn't mean mindlessly repeating what doesn't work. It means remaining committed to your fundamental goal while being flexible about methods. If one approach fails, try another. If that fails, try a third. Keep learning, keep adjusting, keep experimenting until you find what works. The successful person fails as often as the unsuccessful person. They just don't let failure be final. They treat it as data. Marden also emphasizes the importance of maintaining physical and mental reserves so that setbacks don't completely deplete you. The person who's always operating at their maximum capacity with no margin for difficulty will be devastated by obstacles because they have nothing left to draw on. The person who maintains some reserve, who doesn't exhaust themselves completely even when things are going well, can weather setbacks because they have resources to deploy. This means building margin into your life deliberately. Financial margin, so that unexpected expenses don't destroy you. Time margin, so that when something takes longer than expected, you're not immediately in crisis. Energy margin, so that when you need to push harder temporarily, you have the capacity. Emotional margin, so that disappointments don't send you spiraling into despair. These margins might feel like inefficiency during good times, but they're insurance that allows you to survive bad times. Another crucial element Marden discusses is the role of service in achieving success. This might seem counterintuitive because we're talking about getting what you want, which sounds selfish. But Marden observed that the most sustainably successful people are those whose goals involve providing genuine value to others. The person who pursues success purely for personal gain often discovers that achievement feels hollow. The person who achieves success while genuinely helping others finds deep satisfaction. This isn't about being selfless or sacrificing your own interests. It's about aligning your interests with others' interests so that your success naturally benefits people beyond yourself. The business person who genuinely solves customer problems will build a sustainable business. The artist who creates work that genuinely moves audiences will build a lasting career. The professional who genuinely helps colleagues and clients will advance naturally. When your success requires others' success, everyone has an incentive to help you. Conversely, the person who pursues success in ways that exploit or harm others might achieve short-term gains, but will ultimately face resistance, retaliation, and the emptiness of success built on others' suffering. Marden isn't making a naive moral argument that good people always win and bad people always lose. He's making a practical observation that sustainable success requires cooperation, and cooperation requires mutual benefit. This principle suggests asking yourself, who benefits from my achieving this goal? If the answer is only me, consider whether you might adjust your goal to create broader value. This doesn't mean abandoning your ambitions. It means framing them in ways that naturally create allies rather than antagonists. The writer who wants to express themselves might also want to give readers valuable insights. The entrepreneur who wants financial success might also want to solve genuine problems for customers. The professional who wants advancement might also want to mentor others coming behind them. Marden also addresses the question of timing, because many people wonder whether they should wait for the right moment to pursue their goals or start immediately despite imperfect conditions. His answer is clear: start now, but start smart. Waiting for perfect conditions is procrastination disguised as prudence. Perfect conditions never arrive. There will always be reasons to delay, always something that could be better, always an excuse to wait a little longer. However, starting immediately doesn't mean acting recklessly without thought or preparation. It means taking the best action available to you right now, even if that action is modest. If you can't start full-time on your goal, start part-time. If you can't invest major resources, invest what you have. If you don't have all the knowledge you need, start learning while taking whatever action your current knowledge permits. The key is establishing momentum, proving to yourself that you're serious, beginning the accumulation of experience and skill. He tells of a woman who wanted to start a business, but convinced herself she needed to wait until she had saved $20,000 for startup capital. Years passed while she tried to accumulate this sum, during which she took no action toward actually starting the business. Finally, she realized she was using the money as an excuse, a reason to delay indefinitely. She started with $200, a vastly smaller sum, offering services on a tiny scale. Within 6 months, she had learned more about actually running a business than in all the years she spent waiting. Within 2 years, her business had grown beyond what she imagined possible, and she had earned far more than the $20,000 she thought she needed to start. This story illustrates that action teaches you things planning never can. You discover what customers actually want, what problems actually arise, what skills actually matter. Much of what you think you need to know before starting turns out to be irrelevant, while crucial lessons you couldn't have anticipated emerge from actual experience. The person who waits until they feel completely ready will wait forever, because true readiness only comes through doing. Marden emphasizes that this doesn't mean being foolish or taking dangerous risks. It means taking intelligent action appropriate to your current resources and knowledge while being willing to operate with incomplete information. Calculate the worst realistic outcome of taking action. If you can accept that risk, take the action. Often, the worst realistic outcome is much less severe than your fears suggest, and the potential upside is substantial. Now let's discuss something Marden considers absolutely essential: integrity, meaning consistency between your words and actions, between your values and choices, between who you claim to be and who you actually are. This matters for two reasons. First, practical. People notice inconsistency, and it destroys trust, making it impossible to build the relationships and reputation that support most goals. Second, psychological. When your actions contradict your values, you create internal conflict that drains energy and motivation. The person who talks constantly about their goals but takes no action loses credibility with others and, more importantly, with themselves. After enough instances of declaring intentions you don't follow through on, you stop believing your own declarations. Your subconscious learns that your words don't mean anything, that declarations of intent are just noise, and this makes it nearly impossible to mobilize genuine effort because part of you doesn't believe you'll actually do what you say. The antidote is radical honesty with yourself and others. Don't announce intentions you're not committed to following through on. Don't make promises you're not certain you'll keep. Don't pretend to be further along than you actually are. This honesty might feel less impressive than exaggerated claims, but it builds real credibility, both externally with others and internally with yourself. When you develop a track record of doing what you say you'll do, your word carries weight, including with your own subconscious. Marden observed that truly successful people often speak less about their goals than less successful people do. They're too busy actually working toward their goals to spend much time talking about them. They let results speak rather than words. This doesn't mean you should never discuss your goals. Feedback and support from others can be valuable, but it means prioritizing action over declaration, being over-seeming. This connects to another principle: the importance of private victories before public ones. The discipline you develop when no one is watching, the work you do when no one will know whether you did it or not, the choices you make that only you will ever know about, these determine your character and ultimately your destiny. Public success is almost always built on a foundation of private discipline that others never see. The writer produces their best work in solitary hours at their desk that no one witnesses. The athlete develops their skills in countless practice sessions no one attends. The entrepreneur makes crucial decisions and does essential work when there's no audience to impress. These private efforts are where real achievement is forged. The public recognition and reward, if it comes, is just the visible tip of an iceberg of unseen work. This means you must be willing to do excellent work even when no one is watching, even when you could cut corners without being caught, even when the only person who will know you gave your best effort is you. This isn't about morality in an abstract sense. It's about building the character and skills that make achievement possible. The person who only works hard when someone is watching will never develop their full capacity because most of life's important work happens in private. Marden also addresses the role of enthusiasm in achievement. Not superficial, forced positivity, but genuine enthusiasm for what you're pursuing, energy and excitement that makes the work itself rewarding rather than just the eventual outcome. If you're pursuing a goal purely for external rewards, motivation dependent entirely on future outcomes, you'll struggle to persist because the future is always uncertain and the present is often difficult. But if you can find aspects of the journey itself that you genuinely enjoy, if the work energizes rather than depletes you, if you feel excited about today's efforts, regardless of when results appear, you become nearly unstoppable. This enthusiasm carries you through setbacks, makes persistence sustainable, and often leads to higher quality work because you're bringing full energy rather than forcing yourself through drudgery. If you find yourself pursuing a goal with no enthusiasm whatsoever, viewing every action as pure sacrifice toward a distant payoff, Marden suggests this might be the wrong goal. Perhaps it's something you think you should want, rather than something you actually want. Perhaps it's based on others' expectations, rather than your genuine desires. Perhaps you've chosen the right ultimate outcome, but the wrong path toward it. The person who's pursuing the right goal for them will have natural enthusiasm that makes the journey sustainable, even enjoyable. He shares the story of a young man who desperately wanted to become wealthy and chose to pursue law because lawyers made good money. He forced himself through law school despite finding it boring, forced himself to practice law despite finding it soul-crushing, and after 10 miserable years, finally admitted he hated everything about his chosen field. He started over in architecture, earning far less initially, but discovered he loved the work. His enthusiasm led to excellence. Excellence led to reputation. Reputation led to success, and within 5 years, he was earning more than he had as a lawyer while actually enjoying his life. This story illustrates that enthusiasm isn't just a nice bonus, it's often essential to sustained, high performance. The person who loves what they do will naturally outwork and outlast someone with equal talent who's forcing themselves forward. Not because they have more willpower, but because they're drawing from a renewable source of intrinsic motivation rather than depleting a limited tank of willpower. Marden emphasizes that cultivating enthusiasm often requires perspective shifts. You might not love every aspect of your goal, but can you find elements worth getting excited about? The accountant who views their work as boring number crunching might discover enthusiasm by focusing on how their expertise helps clients avoid financial problems. The salesperson who views their work as pestering people might discover enthusiasm by focusing on how they help customers solve problems. Often, the same activity can feel draining or energizing, depending entirely on how you frame its purpose and meaning. Let's now explore what Marden teaches about handling success when it comes, because this brings its own challenges. Many people focus so intensely on achieving their goals that they don't prepare for what happens after achievement. Success can bring unexpected problems, increased responsibility, higher expectations, visibility that attracts criticism, wealth that complicates relationships, recognition that feels hollow if the achievement itself didn't bring expected satisfaction. Marden advises that true success isn't reaching a destination, it's becoming the kind of person capable of achieving meaningful goals. This means that after achieving one goal, you don't rest on your laurels indefinitely. You set new goals that continue challenging and developing you. The person who stops growing after achieving success often finds that success brings disappointment because they've made achievement the end point, rather than recognizing it as one point on a continuous journey of development. This doesn't mean you can never enjoy success or must always be striving. It means recognizing that lasting satisfaction comes from growth and contribution, not from arriving at some final destination where you can stop developing. The most fulfilled people Marden observed were those who achieved significant goals, celebrated appropriately, then turned their attention to new challenges that excited them. He also warns about the trap of success creating comfort that undermines continued growth. The person who struggles builds hunger, discipline, resourcefulness. The person who achieves enough success to become comfortable sometimes loses these qualities, becoming complacent, losing the edge that made their success possible. This is why second-generation wealth often dissipates, why successful companies become bureaucratic and lose their innovative spirit, why champions lose their titles to hungrier challengers. The antidote is deliberately maintaining challenge in your life even after achieving success. This might mean setting new goals that push you beyond your comfort zone, taking on projects that require learning new skills, mentoring others, which forces you to stay sharp, or regularly exposing yourself to situations where you're the beginner again. The key is preventing success from making you soft, maintaining the qualities that generated success in the first place. Marden also emphasizes that how you handle success reveals your character. The person who becomes arrogant, who forgets those who help them, who treats people differently based on status, reveals that success has made them worse rather than better. The person who remains humble, who remembers and appreciates those who supported them, who treats everyone with respect regardless of status, demonstrates that success has refined rather than corrupted their character. This matters practically because sustainable success requires ongoing cooperation with others. The person whose success makes them insufferable will find support vanishing, opportunities closing, relationships deteriorating. The person whose success makes them more generous and gracious will find continued support, new opportunities, strengthening relationships. Your character during success determines whether that success can be maintained and built upon, or whether it proves temporary. Now, as we approach the conclusion of these powerful principles, I want to make sure you understand something crucial. Everything you've heard means nothing if you don't actually apply it. Marden's philosophy isn't meant to be interesting intellectual content you appreciate, then forget. It's meant to be practical guidance you implement immediately in your actual life. The principles work, but only when worked. So here's what you need to do right now, today, before this knowledge fades into the background noise of information you've consumed but never used. Get specific about what you want. Write it down in concrete, detailed terms, not vague wishes, but specific outcomes you can measure and recognize. Then identify the single most important action you could take today that would move you toward that goal. Not the perfect action, not the complete solution, just the best next step available to you right now. Then take that action before you do anything else, before you check your phone, before you scroll social media, before you watch entertainment, before you do anything that isn't more important than your goal. Then tomorrow, do it again. Take one meaningful action toward your goal. Then do it the next day and the next. Not when you feel motivated, not when conditions are perfect, not when you fully understand how you'll get from where you are to where you want to be. Take action based on the best information you have right now. Learn from the results, adjust your approach, and keep moving forward. Will you encounter obstacles? Absolutely. Will you make mistakes? Guaranteed. Will there be days you don't feel like continuing? Constantly. Will people doubt you? Inevitably. Will you doubt yourself? Probably. None of this matters. What matters is whether you continue taking action despite difficulties, whether you persist when quitting seems easier, whether you maintain faith in your eventual success when current evidence seems discouraging. Remember that you're not trying to be perfect. You're trying to be consistent. You're not competing against anyone else. You're trying to be better than you were yesterday. You're not waiting for ideal circumstances. You're working with what you have right now. You're not seeking guaranteed success. You're taking calculated action despite uncertainty. This is how goals are achieved, not through dramatic transformation or sudden breakthrough, but through daily discipline compounded over time. And here's what happens when you actually do this consistently. You'll look back months from now and be shocked at how far you've progressed. Changes that seemed impossible will have become your new normal. Goals that felt overwhelming will have been achieved, revealing new horizons beyond. Skills you lacked will have developed through practice. Confidence you didn't have will have grown from accumulated evidence that you can do difficult things. Resources you needed will have appeared through effort and ingenuity. People you needed to meet will have entered your life because you are taking action in their proximity. This is what Marden meant by getting what you want. Not through luck or magic or wishful thinking, but through understanding these principles and applying them with dedication. You have within you right now everything necessary to begin. You have a mind that can think and plan, hands that can work, a voice that can ask for help, feet that can take you toward opportunities. These are sufficient if you use them consistently toward clear goals. So don't let this be just another inspiring message you appreciate briefly, then forget. Don't let yourself remain someone who knows what to do but doesn't do it, who understands these principles intellectually but never applies them practically. The gap between knowledge and results is action, and that gap can only be bridged by you, through your choices, your efforts, your persistence. Years from now, you'll either look back on this moment as when things changed, when you stopped just learning about achievement and started actually achieving, or you will look back on it as another missed opportunity, another time you heard good advice and did nothing with it. The choice is entirely yours, and you make that choice not through declarations or intentions, but through what you actually do today, tomorrow, and every day after. Your life, as it will be years from now, is being created by your choices right now. The person you're becoming, the circumstances you'll inhabit, the achievements you'll have accumulated or failed to accumulate, all of this flows from how you spend today. Every day you take meaningful action toward your goals, you move closer to getting what you want. Every day you postpone or distract yourself or make excuses, you guarantee remaining where you are. And before we part ways, I want to ask something of you. If this content has provided value, if these principles have inspired or educated you, if you found this summary helpful and motivational, please take just a moment to like this video and subscribe to Audiobook Library. Your support through these simple actions helps this channel grow and reach more people who need this wisdom. It costs you nothing, but means everything to our ability to continue bringing you powerful content like this. Hitting that like button and subscribe button is your way of saying this content matters, that it should reach more people, that channels providing real value deserve to thrive. Think of it this way. If these principles help you achieve your goals, if they contribute in any way to you getting what you want, isn't that worth 5 seconds to click like and subscribe? And beyond helping the channel, you're also helping yourself, because subscribing ensures you'll receive future content that continues supporting your journey. We're building a community of people who are serious about achievement, who apply wisdom rather than just consuming it, who support each other's growth. Your subscription makes you part of that community. So please, right now, before you move on to whatever's next, click that like button, hit subscribe, and consider enabling notifications so you never miss content that could change your trajectory. This small action on your part creates massive value for everyone involved. You get continued access to powerful content. We get the support needed to keep creating it, and others discover resources that might transform their lives. Now, let me leave you with this final thought, the culmination of everything Marden taught. You are far more capable than you currently believe. The limits you perceive are mostly illusions created by past failures, by others' opinions, by fear disguised as realism. The life you want, the person you want to become, the goals you want to achieve. These aren't fantasies reserved for lucky people or specially talented people or privileged people. They're possibilities available to anyone willing to apply these principles with genuine dedication. You don't need to be extraordinary to achieve extraordinary things. You need to do ordinary things with extraordinary consistency. You don't need advantages others lack. You need to maximize advantages you already have. You don't need perfect circumstances. You need to take imperfect action in imperfect circumstances and persist until you get results. The question isn't whether you can get what you want. Assuming what you want is reasonable, and you're willing to pay the price in effort and persistence. The question is whether you'll actually apply these principles rather than just appreciating them intellectually, whether you'll take action today rather than postponing to some hypothetical future, whether you'll persist through difficulties rather than quitting when things get hard. Marden believed in human potential because he had seen it realized countless times in people who had every reason to fail but refused to accept failure as final. He had lived it himself, rebuilding from disaster to success through application of these exact principles. His teachings aren't theoretical speculation. They're distilled wisdom from observing what actually works when real people pursue real goals in the real world. And now, this wisdom is yours, available for you to use starting immediately. You know what to do. Get clear on what you want, cultivate intense desire for it, take consistent, intelligent action, persist through obstacles, develop necessary skills, maintain positive mental attitudes, protect your physical vitality, build productive habits, ignore unhelpful critics, learn from failures, maintain integrity, find enthusiasm in the journey, and help others along the way. These aren't complicated principles requiring genius to understand. They're simple but not easy, straightforward but demanding. The difficulty isn't in understanding them. It's in actually doing them day after day when the initial excitement fades, when progress seems slow, when obstacles appear, when easier alternatives tempt you. But here's what makes it worth it: the profound satisfaction of achieving something you genuinely wanted, of becoming someone you're proud to be, of developing capabilities you didn't know you had, of proving to yourself that you can set goals and actually achieve them. This satisfaction, this self-respect born from genuine achievement, is more valuable than the specific outcome. You transform from someone who wishes things were different into someone who makes things different. That transformation is priceless. So go now, take that first step, that next step, whatever step is available to you right now. Don't wait for perfect knowledge or perfect circumstances or perfect confidence. Start where you are, use what you have, do what you can, and trust that if you persist intelligently, adjusting based on results, learning continuously, maintaining faith in eventual success, you will get what you want. Your journey begins now, this moment, with whatever action you take next. Make it count, make it meaningful, make it progress. And remember, you're not alone in this. Millions of people throughout history have walked this path successfully, proving these principles work, and you're fully capable of being the next success story. The only question is whether you'll actually do it. I believe you will. Marden's principles believe you will. Now you must believe it too, and prove that belief through action. Thank you for listening to this complete summary. Thank you for being someone who seeks wisdom and improvement, and thank you in advance for liking and subscribing to Audiobook Library, because your support makes all the difference. Now go achieve what you want. You have everything you need to begin.